this afternoon, and he indicated he'd see me tonight.
Madam Clerk, are we ready to go? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The hour is 7 o'clock, and as mayor, I hereby call to order a meeting of the Laconia City Council scheduled for July 8, 2019, at this hour. As always, we'll begin our meeting tonight with a salute to our American flag. I'd ask that you please rise and join Councilor Andrew Hosmer in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will note for the record that the minutes to tonight's meeting are being kept by the city clerk, Cheryl Hebert, and I would ask at this time that she please call the roll.
Councilor Cheney.
Here.
Councilor Bounds.
Here.
Councilor Littman.
Present.
Councilor Haynes.
Here.
Councilor Hamel.
Present.
Councilor Hosmer.
Here.
Mayor Engler.
Here. Landslide for here tonight.
Number two. Good win.
We did it unanimous
A
once.
couple of outliers. Okay.
In honor of
Yep.
former council.
Brought in all your shit from here.
Also note for the record that the council, first of all, let me state for the record that all 6 councilors are present tonight, and so therefore a quorum has been established for this meeting. Also note for the record that the council is joined at the front table tonight by City Manager Scott Myers and by the City Finance Director Glenn Smith. First order of business tonight is the acceptance of minutes. Before you, gentlemen, you have the minutes to our last meeting on June 24th. Those were distributed 2 days later by the clerk, and as of tonight, no suggested changes have been made, so unless there are any at this hour, I'm going to declare the minutes to our June 24th, 2019 meeting to be accepted as submitted by the clerk. We have no consent and action items to tackle tonight, so we're going to go immediately to citizens' comments for matters not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in our audience tonight who wishes to address the council on a matter that is not on tonight's agenda? Mr. Fleischman.
My name is Jerry Fleischman. I live over in Ward 3 in Henry's district. And I just have some comments on what I keep reading in the paper about proposals for the land up at the old school. And I have to say that I'm really disappointed. The only thing I seem to read about is the proposals about some sports complex up that way. And I think that's basically a horrible idea. Now, I went to one of those meetings, and it was a horrible meeting, so I didn't go to another one. But it seems like that's what they seem to concentrate on. And my suggestion would be that that's really in the wrong direction. It's got no long-term benefits for the town. They talk about having some retail there, which is something I don't think we need. Talk about some commercial there, which I don't think we need. And I would suggest a couple of things. First, I think that before things go too far, this body should organize a small committee that works with those folks over there and takes input from you that they should consider. And the most important thing I think we need to do up there is to take a look at light industrial development. Now, a number of years ago, before I moved here, the people in the town put properties like Lexington Road, like out by the airport, over on Hounsel, where we have light industry and other strong businesses. And it seems to me the most important thing we can do with that property is to attract new business with good paying jobs there. That would lead people to come to Laconia, to work here and to hopefully move and live here, and would have long-term benefits for the community. Yet, I don't see or hear anything like that even being discussed by this group of folks who are looking at that issue. And I think it's really important that you step forward to provide some of your leadership to that group before we get too far down the road where it becomes difficult to change the minds of those that have already made up their minds. It also turns out that even though they've recommended this sports complex over there, they readily admit that it isn't self-sustaining, which means that it's going to cost the people of Laconia money. So everything I've heard about that so far has been in the wrong direction. And I'm just hopeful that you folks perhaps have a different view and will take the opportunity before it gets too far down the road to have some of you convene with these folks and express some difference of opinion. And that's,
May I respond?
sure.
Members of this board and the city manager and city staff have been, in fact, in relatively constant contact with the members of the commission appointed by the legislature and the governor on a regular basis, and have had these conversations, many conversations. And I think it's fair to say, looking in the direction of the city manager at this point in time, I know Councilor Cheney has been to all their meetings, or most of their meetings as well, that I think we have exerted significant influence to date on what direction that project is going. What I can tell you with regard to your specific recommendation is the first thing they did was hire a company out of New York, a consulting firm, to advise them on the viability of various uses that had been suggested, including industrial, light industrial, office park, et cetera, et cetera. And that consulting firm came back last year and told them that your specific ideas and other similar ones were not viable. That Laconia had no immediate future, reasonable future to assume that it could attract those kind of businesses, either white collar or blue collar, to the area, and they stated all the reasons why they believed that. So at a very early stage, the commission, in effect, went in a different direction, believing that there was no viable opening for Laconia to become a light manufacturing center, an office park, commercial center, whatever you want to call it, any of those kind of things. And so they started looking in different directions. And that consulting firm backed up they gave a detailed report as to why they concluded that. Everything from lack of population base and lack of employee base to lack of proximity to an interstate highway, et cetera, all the reasons why they felt it just wasn't feasible. That we'd be sitting here with a vacant piece of land for decades waiting for somebody to build on it.
Well,
So we didn't like that message, but that's what that's,
well,
What
I
we
don't
were
like that
told.
message either, as you can imagine, but
but it wasn't that it wasn't discussed or that it wasn't considered
yes,
or
I
anything. It was
appreciate
dismissed.
you telling me about that, because I haven't heard.
And that
I
report
didn't
is
hear about
available
that.
online. You're welcome to read that at the commission's website.
Okay, well, with all due respect to those consulting firms and the commission, I still don't agree with them. I still think that for the town to move ahead, we need those kinds of jobs in this town. Now, maybe that's not the exact spot for it, but certainly a sports complex has nothing positive to contribute to the long-term well-being of our community. So maybe we need to rethink some of these things and come up with some better ideas. But in spite of what you told me, I still don't agree.
Well,
So,
I think,
in any
I
case,
think I should also say, that's fine, and I certainly accept that. You're entitled to your opinion. I think the other thing that the public should be aware of, if they're not already, is that the consultants who did come up with what they thought were feasible uses for the property concluded that there was no one single use that the entire 200 acres should be dedicated to. And because there was no single use that was strong enough, if you will, to carry the whole development and provide for the infrastructure. And again, when you say that city would have to pay for this, there's no requirement that we pay for anything up there. That's state property. It doesn't preclude the city at some point from participating, but we're under no obligation whatever to put in infrastructure up there or build anything up there or whatever, none. That's state property. So anyway, I will just list quickly for the record, since you brought it up tonight, the different pieces of uses they see taking up parts of that property are the possibility of a youth sports facility of some kind to attract sports tourism, as they call it, tournaments, basically. Second being some sort of a health facility. Their original idea was they wanted to have a long-term care facility up there, similar to the Taylor community, and people on this, sitting at this table tonight, lobbied pretty strongly against that, and they took that off the table. But they still would like some sort of a, quote, health facility up there, whatever that would mean, a rehab facility or something. I'm not sure what exactly, they don't know at this point what else. Third thing is a hotel. Fourth thing is some sort of agricultural use is most likely to be factored into the mix. Fifth is in two parts, housing. Two-part, right now on the master plan that's in the conceptual stage, there's two different housing developments up there. One is more of a, I don't want to say upscale, but one is what we call starter housing development for people who are buying their first homes, and then another part of the development would be for homes that would cost more money than that. No specific prices and whatnot have been listed, but those are the pieces, and then a small commercial element. Those are the pieces right now that they're a long way from. They have no idea how to pay for the infrastructure at this point in time. They're a long way from. They asked the legislature for $1.7 million of funding to keep them going over the next 2 years, and the current budget, which is still up in the air because the governor vetoed it, had half that amount in it. So, that it's going to be a long, slow process.
Well, I appreciate your input and update, and I will try to find that thing on the internet.
Okay. If you need help on that, I'm sure the city manager's office could help you find it.
Or Henry can get it for me. But I think it's really critical that whatever goes in up there is a forward-looking thing that can develop the community and give it some more strength. Because that's a unique place, and we need more jobs and middle housing and those kinds of things in the town, and we got to think about ways to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
The commission has scheduled a public hearing here in Laconia for a week from tomorrow, so it's July 16th at 7 o'clock at the Memorial Middle School in the multipurpose room.
July 16th, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Representative St. Clair, did I see you ready to make the long walk?
Nice tie.
Thank you very much, and I might add, happy birthday, Counselor.
Thank you.
Okay, I got that now. I know you have a big agenda tonight, so I'm going to go as fast as I can, because I have several things I wanted to speak about. I wanted to give a follow-up on Motorcycle Week, because I did not really see anything of great length in the paper. I may have missed it. I want to tell you, first of all, as you all must know, it was a very good week. We had a couple of rainy days, but overall, things went very smoothly. I want to congratulate you all for taking what I didn't think was a chance on that traffic plan on the first weekend, because if you were up there, it was solid chrome from curb to curb, and it worked out very well, and I heard no complaints from anybody up there on that. So again, I thank you all for that. That being said, I think Public Works did a very good job all week. I know my friend Wes and I had bumped heads a few times over stuff, but we seemed to work it out. I look forward to next summer or next spring, if not before that, perhaps some of the department heads and myself, including the chief of police, can get together, fire chief, and just go over some stuff to make sure that we're all on the same page, as this is always a work in progress. I also wanted to point out that we had a logo that was on the sidewalk up there that, and I'm just going to pass this around so you can look at it. It was strictly a logo for promoting next year's dates. And last year we had it on there, and it disappeared within a couple of days. This year, I had asked the city manager to leave it on there at least until mid-July. It came up, I think it was by mistake, but in any event, it lasted a couple days and it was gone. Again, that being said, I'd like to see some work done that maybe somewhere in the city, we all say we're very happy to have Motorcycle Week here. It's a great financial inspirator for a lot of people. I wish we could have something more permanent somewhere, like they do in a couple other cities where they have this big event, where we say, you know, welcome to Laconia. We have some things that we have here, but maybe home of the world's oldest motorcycle rally would be great, or something like that. We are fast approaching the 100th anniversary, and I think that would be very nice thing to do. I'd also like to mention, moving past Motorcycle Week now, we have a real problem at the intersection of Scenic Road and Watson Road, and not just during Motorcycle Week. That curve has always been a bad curve. We had an accident there, I am told, this past weekend that had nothing to do with the ride they had from Broken Spoke north. It's just an inherently dangerous curve. If you look at the curve sign up there, it's no different than on gradual curve signs we have in other parts of the state. It's just like a little curve. It doesn't say to slow down. It doesn't say a dangerous curve ahead. Perhaps we could do something on the road in writing. It's just a bad, bad curve. And in my lifetime, I can think of, and I'm sure Councilor Hamill, as a rider, can remember these. We've had a lot of accidents on that road, on that curve. Now, during Motorcycle Week, we put up a bright light there. A lot of times we have officers camped there. The problem with that is that they're normally right on the curve. And so, unless you're coming straight, if you're coming down from Broken Spoke to go right towards the Weirs on the scenic road, you don't see that. As a matter of fact, you don't even see the curve until you're still there. I believe the speed limit there is 35. I don't think it's 30. I think it's 35. And if you're not aware of the sharpness of that curve, that's a problem. So I'd love to see somebody tackle that before the summer's out with something. Crosswalks. I'm under the impression that now we're told that the lights, like at the hospital on High Street, where you can push the button, I'm under the impression now that those are legal again. I see those in places like Daytona and Chicago and Boston, where pedestrians can push the button, the lights flash yellow, oncoming traffic will know that there's a pedestrian there, and they slow down or stop. I wish we could do that. I want to pass out this here too. And I'm sorry, I took these pictures kind of on a what you're looking at there is where the old Route 9 went through Hillsborough. And you've probably been down to Tilton, they've got nice colored crosswalks there. But these really grab your attention. They're a bright yellow, and they've got white on the borders, and they light up at night. And I think that would be much better than what we have here. A lot of our crosswalks are in dire need of being repainted, but I'm sure the Public Works is stretched thin on that. But I just think that we're always talking about pedestrians. We're putting in these bump outs, which I'm not a big fan of. But this here, you could light these crosswalks up much better. And I really think we should have those signs that, and I would much rather see those than those potential missiles that we just put up willy-nilly in crosswalks. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the cone or the very heavy item that says state law. yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. So if a business or somebody feels that they need to have that, maybe they can purchase some of these signs that you could push the button and they light up. Because those things in the crosswalks, if they're hit, and they're quite often hit, can become a missile and cause somebody great harm. So I would hope that you guys would take that serious and look at that. Again, I don't know where that comes from. And then my last item here, and I want to pass this out. What I'm showing you here is the crosswalks in Concord, New Hampshire. And you'll notice that the crosswalks here are right up against parking spaces. And I'll use that as a segue. By the way, your reverse parking out here seems to be working well, and I'm very happy to see that. I know, but so far so good, so I'll knock on that. Well, hey, you know, we all want things to work, so that's a good thing. However, I'll point out that those parking spaces, and I can be corrected here, are for all-day parking. As you know, I complained to some of you about the parking spot across from the Antique Center on Main Street there that disappeared because I was told that it's a state law that says a crosswalk, parking spaces cannot be up against the crosswalk. Those pictures you're looking at there are from Concord, New Hampshire. And when I spoke to somebody in the legislative services research about what I was seeing, I was told, yes, it's a state law, but the state chooses not to enforce that. They leave it up to the cities and towns. I think I've heard that before about other rules and regulations. So I don't think that the city should be running around taking away parking spots that are good for 2 hours or less for something like this. I just think that's a reach. And my last thing on my comments here is if you can think back to 2008 and 2007, there was a group of business people, Tom Smith was one of them, who came to the council and asked that parking enforcement not be done on Saturdays and Sundays. Because on Saturdays and Sundays, the parking spaces on Main Street are not inhabited by what everybody was worried about, which were employees or just people that were going to park there all day. And I would try to get the council, again, to go back to doing that. They don't enforce it on Sundays, but on Saturdays, the people are out there now this time of year with the markers there. Two of my employees this past summer got tickets in the City Hall parking lot on Saturday. And they were the only two cars in the entire lot. And I just thought, my word, this is nuts. So I would hope that the council maybe would look back at the
They were
minutes.
parked in all-day parking in the City Hall parking lot, or in the first row?
Oh, they were in the first row, but again, they were the only ones in the lot, and it was on
If over one row,
Saturday.
they'd have been fine.
Yeah, I know, they just didn't think of that because it was on a Saturday, so I get what you're saying, Your Honor. So I would hope that, again, you guys would maybe go back in time and look at the discussion that was held then, and I believe it was 2008. So, that's all, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else tonight wish to address the council on a matter that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, interviews. We have several interviews scheduled for tonight. The first one is with regard to the Conservation Commission. Lisa Moran.
I just looking for my phone. Incriminating evidence on that. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Lisa Moran is seeking reappointment to the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2022. Welcome.
Thank you.
Before I recognize you, let me point out, if I can, for all of the people that we're going to interview tonight, that per council rule, we do interviews for appointments at the first meeting of a given month, and the election for those positions is held at the following meeting. So there will be no election tonight. That will be at our meeting on the 22nd of July. You are welcome to come to that meeting if you wish, but it is not at all necessary that you do so, and usually appointees don't, unless it's a contested election, perhaps. But, so anyway, Everyone's welcome tonight, but it's not necessary that you come back on the 22nd when we have the actual elections, all right? So if you would please introduce yourself and tell us what ward you live in and why you would like to be reappointed.
So my name is Lisa Moore, and I live in Ward 2, and I have been on the Conservation Commission for 10 years now. And I would like to be reappointed because I still find it very exciting to talk to the people who are coming to the Conservation Commission for whatever their reason being. Usually it's for a review of a development plan, or might be something to do with the waterfront. I have a degree in environmental conservation, and I have worked in the natural resources field for about 20 years now. So the fact that I still find that exciting, I think, does say something about my passion for wanting to engage with people and talk to them about that. And I realize fully that the Conservation Commission is an advisory committee only, and so that's how I approach it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Ms. Moore?
Just thank you for your time, Lisa.
Thank you.
And thank you for your volunteer service all these years.
Appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, we'll switch focus to the Heritage Commission. Lois Keeson, did I get that right? Kesson? Lois is seeking original appointment as a regular member of the Heritage Commission for a 3-year term expiring at the end of 2022. And I should say that at present, there is one vacant regular member position available on the commission, and Lois is the only person who applied for that position. So that's a good head start for you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm Lois Kesson. I live at 3 Tanglewood. What?
You can pull it down.
Oh, I can.
Yes,
I
you
kind
can.
of like standing on my tiptoe. I live at 3 Tanglewood Lane in Laconia. I'm in Ward 1. I grew up in this town. I left for 50 years, lived in Cambridge, Mass., where I was very much involved in open space planning and keeping downsizing of Mass Ave from Porter Square to the Arlington line, and also saving the Swedenborg Church. I love this city. I learned that love from my parents, who cared deeply about this city and contributed a lot of their time to keeping it going. And I would like to keep the city as beautifully as we can. And that's who I am.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Just a quick comment.
Counselor Haynes.
Lois has been attending the Heritage Commission meetings, and she's a good find.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Lois for her commitment to the city of Laconia. I know it's, here we go again. I want to thank Lois for her commitment to the city of Laconia. I know that even though you've been in Massachusetts for some 50 years, that you remain in touch with what's going on with Laconia, and appreciate your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, turning to the Downtown TIF Advisory Board, we have 2 applicants seeking a reappointment tonight, the first of which is Brianna Neal. Ms. Neal? She is currently a member. She's seeking reappointment for another 3-year term. This one would expire at the end of August 2022. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Brianna Neal. I live in Ward 4. I've been serving on the Downtown TIF Board for, I think, 5 years now. Where's the time gone? I've sat through many projects on the board with the Gateway Park, sections of the Riverwalk, some private-public partnerships with drainage improvements, and banner poles, and a number of different smaller functions that downtown has needed through the years. And I've been happy to sit on the board thus far.
Okay, any questions or comments for Brianna? Counselor Hamel?
Yeah, Bree, I want to thank you for stepping forward again. I know you were very involved in the past with different things, and I appreciate that very much for what you're doing for Laconia. And I know you're excited about it, and you like Laconia a lot, so I thank you for that.
Thank you. I did have one question for you guys, though. What do you expect of the TIF board moving forward?
Sorry, say a little louder.
What do you expect of the downtown TIF board moving forward as an advisory board to you, since your proposed future for the TIF budget is limiting our active projects for the future?
So I'm not quite sure I completely understand the question.
Well,
Could take it.
You want to take a crack at it?
Sure. I think the manager explained at the last meeting that the assumptions about the amount of dollars to spend assumed a very low impact of the investments that are made in return. And I think that there'll be more money to work on projects beyond making the investment in the Colonial. I think the Colonial is a key aspect of developing the downtown, with that as sort of a undeveloped eyesore in the heart of the city that we've got to tackle that first to make some other things go. But I think with the other components of the project that were discussed and some private investment that isn't necessarily factored in there, that there's going to be more to work on. So I think, the types of ideas that were brought forward, for example, I, for one, was the lone vote against the parking change, which I'm glad to be proven wrong on that. But I think different ways that we can utilize our assets in the downtown differently, and how we can get other folks like yourself to get more involved in trying to not just work on their own business, but complement one another, I think is kind of what we're looking for.
And that is one of the reasons why I asked the question, is because we do currently have a vacancy on the TIF board, and I'd like to have a more clear understanding of the position moving forward and how we can get that position filled sooner.
I'm not speaking for anybody but myself, but I want the TIF board's input, I want your input on a number of issues that are facing the downtown. The parking, St. Joseph's, the Colonial Theater. I think that the more wide-ranging views, the more diversity we get with respect to what we can do and what we can't do, with or without money, just makes everything better. So I want to thank you for what you've done so far. Keep it up. Love it. Thank you.
I appreciate you answering my question.
I think the title is self-explanatory. I mean, I think the council typically looks to the board, hopefully, the board is active, and the council looks to the board for advice on anything that affects the prosperity of downtown Laconia, whatever the subject might be. Now, in particular, your duty, if you will, is to recommend possible projects, expenditures, whatever, improvements that can be made, or to advise the council on your opinion as a group of projects that are suggested by someone else. But that's, I mean, advisory speaks for itself to me. I think the group can be as active as it wishes to be.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because sometimes in the past, I've personally felt as though we might feel as though we're bugging city council when we give our opinion on something that we haven't been asked to give it for.
No,
So
I don't think
just want
so.
to make sure that that's moving
I
forward,
don't
that
think
it's
there's
encouraged.
any feeling that, on that part at all, that you're being a nuisance or anything like that. I don't think that's in any way, shape, or form true. In fact, I wish this TIF board and the other TIF boards were more proactive
Be careful what you wish for.
myself.
I agree with what they said, Bree. You may think that you can't do anything because maybe the TIF funds are low or whatever, but they're not going to be low forever. There's a lot of things we have done by leveraging that to do some great projects. And a lot of them were brought to us by the TIF committee. And I think that's what your job is to, figure out things around town that we can do, that you would advise or whatever, and, let us figure out how we can finance it if it makes sense. So, the TIF fund will be there. It'll be increasing. There's a lot of good projects that are happening around town already that'll increase the amount going into that. So,
Well, and there's a lot that the TIF board can weigh in on, have an opinion on, give the council advice on that doesn't necessarily require expenditure or at least significant expenditure. If we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions or whatever, I mean, there are lots of things that have been done or could be done that
I
don't
tend to
require
think
that kind of
small
money.
investment, large impact.
I'm sorry?
I said I
Yes.
tend to think more of a small investment, large impact sort of way
There you
anyway.
go.
Okay,
I appreciate you answering my question.
I have a question you don't have to answer.
You can try.
Where'd you get that T-shirt?
A friend of mine in Chicago.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Our second applicant for reappointment to that board tonight is Representative St. Clair. He also is seeking another 3-year term to expire at the end of August 2022.
Here I am. I would like to stay on the TIF board. And listening to Bree had some good questions and got back some good answers, so I'm okay with that. There's a couple projects that I hope, I know one that was approved by the council, I believe it was approved, was the banner poles at the intersection of Main Street and Union Avenue, Court Street. I thought those were the construction was gonna start this spring on that. I could be wrong. But time marches on, and I hope we can get those up, possibly in time for Christmas. Would be nice, because that's something that we've all felt could be utilized by the city in different organizations. Also, one other project that we had talked about before Kevin had passed on to his new job was taking the lights that were on the Christmas tree, those really big, long, almost neon lights, and maybe putting those along some of our bridges. A lot of cities, if you've been to Lowell, Mass lately, or they have their bridges all lit up, and they look actually pretty spectacular at night. And it probably would be one of those projects that wouldn't take a ton of money. I know one of the questions was power, or a power source, and we talked about maybe a solar thing or something like that. But we have several bridges in the area. We have the one down here by Best Weston on Main Street. We have certainly on Church Street. That's a prime candidate. Weirs Bridge. These are all different areas that I think would look pretty cool. My goal, besides all the other things that TIF does, is to try to bring a sense of activity downtown any way we can. I wish we had several other events besides Pumpkin Fest during the course of the year, and maybe that'll come at a later time. But that's just some of my thoughts about being on that board.
Questions or comments for Representative St. Clair?
Glad to have you.
Okay,
Glad to
thank
be
you.
here. All right, thank you all.
Finally, tonight, we have 2 applicants for one position on the Water Commission. One is the incumbent, Dennis Bothamley, and one is a new applicant, Thomas Selleck. Mr. Bothamley, Dennis, is he here? Yep, there he is. This is seeking reappointment for another 3-year term.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have served on the Water Commission for 4 years. The 1 year, I served 1 year of Richard Brenton's remaining term when he resigned for health reasons, and then I was also reappointed for a full 3-year term. My background is I have a bachelor's degree in urban planning. I also have a master's degree in social work. That takes a little explanation because of people always thinking that it's a casework sort of a thing, but mine was not. It was a public administration track entirely. I worked in state government for 14 years. in New Hampshire. My last 3 years, I ran the Office of Social Services, which was both child welfare and elder affairs for the state of New Hampshire. And then for another 6 years, I ran the Medicaid Policy Bureau of the Connecticut Medicaid program, rate setting policy, benefit policy. Then I ran my own business for 10 years. And then for the last 17 years, I ran a large part of a state and local government consulting firm. Throughout all of that, I was heavily involved in assisting in public policy development, regulation development, government budgeting, and operations management, cost analysis. And to my surprise, I found that those things fit in very well with the Water Commission. I find that I can add value from a different perspective, and I look forward to continuing my work there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dennis?
Thank you, Dennis. I just want to note for the record that your attendance at the Water Commission meetings is really pretty good.
The counselor is keeping track.
I'll remember that.
And I'll say I've had the opportunity to serve with Dennis now and certainly enjoy serving with you and appreciate your service to the Water Commission.
It's a very interesting job where you're taking a different perspective on events that happen and looking at it from a water quality at the lowest possible cost idea, and I enjoy that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas Selling. Mr. Selling, welcome, sir.
For the record, my name is Thomas Selling. I live in Ward 1 for approximately 30 years. I've got a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and a master's degree in environmental engineering. About 15 years ago, I served 2 of my 3-year assignment with the Water Commission, and due to some family issues and some professional issues, I wasn't able to continue to complete my term there. In my professional capacity, I've dedicated my service to protecting groundwater and surface water and wetlands in the state of New Hampshire. So I feel I'm more than qualified to continue to serve on that board and represent the citizens of Laconia and their water quality and water budgeting issues.
Any questions for Mr. Selling?
How long were you on the Water Commission?
2 of the 3-year
Microphone,
term,
please.
about 15 years ago.
I asked how long you were on the Water Commission.
2 years.
And when did you, I understand circumstances, but when did you leave?
I don't have the exact dates, but I think it was 2004 and 2005.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, for the last 2 of you gentlemen there, as I said earlier tonight, we'll have the election for this one seat at our next meeting on the 22nd. You are welcome to attend, but it's not necessary. Okay, that concludes our interviews. We have no elections tonight. We'll do that at the next meeting, and we have a number of public hearings to conduct tonight. The first one is a public hearing to amend City Code Chapter 235 on zoning, creating a new section that introduces the concept of performance zoning. The details of that resolution, councilors, is on page 58 of your packet. A notice of this public hearing was made available in the June 26, 2019 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun. It was also posted at City Hall, the Community Center, and Laconia Public Library. So I'm going to open this public hearing at 7:43 p.m. and ask if there's anyone here tonight who would like to address the council on the matter of the proposal to create a performance zoning ordinance for the city of Laconia. Is she getting up? No. Okay, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed at 7:44 p.m. and note that we will take this issue up tonight for second reading under unfinished business. Okay, next up is a public hearing on the community development. public hearing on Community Development Finance, on the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 for Lakes Region community developers to renovate a 4-unit building located at 8587 Elm Street and 21 Winter Street, Unit 5 in Laconia. Community development block grant funds are available to municipalities throughout the New Hampshire, through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. Up to $500,000 annually is available for economic development, up to $500,000 for public facility and housing projects, and up to $350,000 in emergency activities, and up to $12,000 is available per planning grants. All projects must primarily benefit low and moderate income persons. This is a public hearing on proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for a $500,000 grant for Lakes Region community developers to renovate, as I said before, a 4-unit building at 85 Elm Street in Laconia. The building provides families coming from homelessness with traditional housing to learn skills and access educational and career opportunities to get their lives back on track. Building needs several upgrades, et cetera. In addition, Community Developers is considering tearing down an old garage to provide additional parking. 21 Winter Street, mentioned before, Unit 5 was minimally rehabbed 25 years ago. A very long-term tenant just passed away, and the unit needs a complete rehab, including kitchen, bath, windows, and walls, and that's what the remainder of the $500,000 grant would be used for. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the June 19th, 2019 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun. It was also posted at City Hall, the Community Center, and Laconia Public Library. So I'm going to open this public hearing at 7:46 p.m. and ask if there's anyone tonight who would like to address the council on the matter of the City of Laconia sponsoring to the Community Development Finance Authority a $500,000 grant on behalf of Lakes Region community developers.
Hi, Donna Lane, CDBG consultant. Thanks for reading for me. I came here to read to you. Can I just clarify one thing? It's up to $500,000. It's probably going to be like $160,000. We just use that terminology until we know the exact amount. So it's just up to $500,000. And Sal, can you come on up? Sal wants to introduce something new since this notice came out.
My name is Sal Stephen Hubbard. I'm the Housing Development Director for Lakes Region Community Developers. And we would like to remove the proposed work at 21 Winter Street. The reason being that we want to get the work done right away as opposed to waiting until we hear about the CDBG funds from the Community Development Finance Authority. And secondly, we would be changing the classification of the Elm Street building from transitional housing to affordable housing. We're reworking our transitional housing program, and so we would like to change that designation.
So do we need to change anything?
No.
These not substantive enough changes that would require an additional posting?
No, that's why Sal had to introduce these changes. They've already been approved. The changes, as long as Sal introduced them at the public hearing, because they're.
So the actual grant you're looking for is far less than $500,000.
Correct.
So there would be room for another, you to come back or another entity to apply for the remaining funds in our allocation.
Yes, but it's probably too late. The last round is July.
Okay.
But
And the
next year.
clock starts over when?
January.
January.
Economic development's available anytime. Emergency's available anytime. But the money we're going for is housing and public facility, and you can get up to $500,000 a year. So, and I don't believe anyone else asked. So this was it for this round.
Councilor Lippman.
Could you explain the difference between affordable housing and transitional housing? And
Sure. The transitional housing program that we operate has been operated solely in the 4 units at the Elm Street location, 85, 87 Elm Street. And that is for families who have experienced homelessness, and it's sort of a way for them to get housed and then go through intensive counseling, goal setting, and kind of get their lives together so that then they can move to permanent housing. And so what we intend to do is, rather than have just one building be transitional housing, we intend to have 4 units in our Laconia portfolio. That's 28 units that would be available for those 4 families, but we wouldn't have this mismatch where when somebody needed a transitional housing unit and Elm Street was full, they would remain homeless. But if we had a vacancy and nobody was available to move in, then we would have this vacancy that we held open. So we're trying to just get rid of that mismatch so that we can house people and counsel people more appropriately.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but the properties continue to remain on the tax rolls for this?
Correct.
So, if I may.
You may.
The actual name change itself is not, doesn't have an economic factor to it.
No, it does not.
It's just an aid for you to address more families across the board.
That's correct. We'll still be housing the same number of families, and 4 families will be in the transitional housing program. When they graduate from that program, they can just stay where they are. They don't have to move themselves. We can just move the services. And then bring in 4 more families to vacant units.
Okay. But the money is going to go for the Winter Street rehab, right?
So we're removing Winter Street from the program because we'll do it more quickly than we would. We won't hear from CDFA until November on these funds, and we want to get that unit back online. So we've identified other sources of funds for the Winter Street unit.
What kind of additional funds for the Winter Street unit?
So I think we're using property reserves, and we've also applied for funds from NeighborWorks America, which we should hear about in the next week or so.
Okay.
So this is only for Elm Street
So
now?
this is only for the rehab of Elm
We do not
Street.
need to change the wording of the resolution tonight?
Do we need to change?
Because we're going to take this up under unfinished business tonight, second reading.
In the resolution, I thought it just said apply for the application. I don't think it's worded that specifically. I think it just says the
I can't hear you. please.
Scoot over, would
Thank
you?
you. Yes, absolutely.
I think the resolution, the motion just says the application. I don't think it specifically says the properties.
Oh.
Does it?
It does.
Oh, it does.
The motion will, yeah.
Okay, yes, if we can just say the Elm Street rehabilitation when we get that far. Yes.
Sorry, say again?
Yes, if we can modify that to just say the Elm Street.
All right, so we'll need an amendment then. We won't need to repost this.
You can just make that the motion at the time, because the motion is not on the floor until you make that. So you could just,
Passed it on first reading the way it's worded now.
to be safe, then, yeah, you can go ahead and make a
Amend
motion
it.
to strike the Winter Street, accept that amendment, and then vote
Okay.
on the motion.
All right, we'll do that then. All right, anything else?
Not from us.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to offer a comment to the council on this matter? Okay, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed at 7:53 PM. And we will move on to the next one, which is related. And this is legalese we have to do. This is a public hearing on the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for the proposed Lakes Region Community Development Project on Elm Street. Although this project does not involve any displacement or relocation of persons or businesses, if the city were to undertake the CDBG project, which involved displacement or relocation, they would follow this plan. The plan outlines the measures they would take to find comparable suitable housing for persons or businesses displaced or relocated by the project. This project may require some temporary relocation. Residents will be relocated to empty units on site, to modular units on site, or to other properties owned by Lakes Region Community Developers. Lakes Region Community Developers will pay temporary relocation costs for eligible households. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the June 19, 2019 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun, posted at City Hall, the Community Center, and at the Laconia Public Library. So I'm going to open this public hearing at 7:54 PM and ask if there's anyone in attendance tonight who would like to offer comment to the council on the on the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for the Elm Street project. No, so I'll declare the public hearing closed at 7:55 PM and we'll move on to the next one. Staying on the subject of Lakes Region Community Developers, this is a public hearing on the progress on Lakes Region Community Developers Community Development Block Grant Project acquisition of 191 and 193 Court Street, known to one and all of us as Walter's Market. Community developers completed the acquisition of 191 and 193 Court Street buildings in April of 2019 and closed on the acquisition construction loan with Meredith Village Savings Bank. Court Street rehab is well underway with construction approximately 65% complete. This is probably old because it's now saying that construction completion date is targeted for mid-July, which would be next week. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the June 19, 2019 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun. It was posted at City Hall, the Community Center, and the Laconia Public Library. Is there anyone with us tonight who wishes to comment to the city on the progress of Lakes Region Community Developers redevelopment project and acquisition of 191 and 193 Court Street? Val. What did I say?
You open the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Open the public hearing at 7:56 PM.
My name is Sal Stephen Hubbard. I'm the Housing Development Director for Lakes Region Community Developers. And I just wanted to thank the council for sponsoring our application to CDFA for the acquisition and rehab of the formerly known as Walters Market. The construction is going very well, and it may just be done by the end of next week. We're not far off from our original plan. Will certainly be completed by the end of July and hope to move our offices in there in August. And we will be having an open house, I think, in September, but you all will be notified.
Councilor Hamel.
Are these just your offices that are going in there?
It's actually offices and community center. We'll finally have a room that is big enough where we can use for community engagement activities and where residents can have meetings. Residents of our Laconia housing can have meetings and participate in the community.
No meat counter, though, I asked.
But I understand you can still buy beans at the Water Street Market, the Water Street Cafe.
Polish beans?
Yes.
Any questions from the council? This is an application, as she said, that we sponsored. So this is where how the money is being spent. Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to offer comment on this matter tonight? Okay, I wanted to close the public hearing at 7:57 PM and move on to our final public hearing tonight. And this is with regard to another progress report. This is a public hearing on the progress on navigating recovery of the Lakes region and its community development block grant project acquisition and renovation of the building at 102 Court Street. This property was to be relocated offices and a recovery service center for Navigating Recovery. Navigating Recovery purchased 102 Court Street on March 3rd of this year. Minor rehab construction began in April, and RCO moved into the new office space on June 26. Additional energy efficiency projects will continue, including putting up storm windows, replacing light fixtures to be energy efficient, and spray foam insulating the basement. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the June 19, 2019 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun. It was also posted at City Hall, the Community Center, and the Laconia Public Library. I will open this public hearing at 7:58 PM and ask if there's anyone here tonight who wishes to report on the progress of this project.
Good evening. My name is Daisy Pierce. I'm the Executive Director of Navigating Recovery of the Lakes Region, and I would also like to thank you for sponsoring our application to CDFA for the acquisition and rehab of 102 Court Street. We are in love with it. It's a very beautiful building, and we're very happy to be there. I would also like to note that since we purchased the building, but did not yet move into it before April 1st, we are paying full property taxes this year. So I know
But
that
not next year.
we'll get there. Any questions?
Any questions of the progress of this project on Court Street? Oh, I guess not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to offer comment on the progress of the Navigating Recovery rehab of 102 Court Street? Well, I'll close this public hearing at 7:59 PM. Okay, I think we are on to Mayor's report. And a couple things. First of all, I'd like to mention tonight that,
Mr. Mayor, we have a presentation on number 14.
oh, I skipped over it, I'm sorry. Assessing
Go
update.
home.
Stephen Hamilton.
So as the council is aware, the city hired the services of Whitney Consulting Group to be the assessor and provide assessing services for the city back this spring. Since we were already into the budget and we wanted to give Steve and his firm an opportunity to come in and get a few weeks under their belt, we didn't feel appropriate to throw him into presenting the budget to you all in April and answering a lot of questions. But we thought this was a good opportunity as Steve and his staff have been in the city for several months now to come in and make the introduction and talk a little bit about what he's been doing and what he's seeing in the citywide assessing. So, Steve.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I hope that we have the presentation. It's up. Okay, great. I'm going to try and take as little of your time as possible. I know you have a full agenda and it's already been a busy meeting. My name is Stephen Hamilton. I'm the principal of Whitney Consulting Group, and we have been awarded the contract to provide assessing services to the city of Laconia. This is going to be about 30,000 square foot high altitude view of what is going on with assessments and value within the city, what we've observed so far, and a report on some of the activity that we've been involved with since we took over on April 1st. So I'm going to go quickly through, introduce who Whitney Consulting Group is, review the timelines for the valuation update for 2019, review some of the issues that are going to require a little bit of attention when it comes to that update of values, and some of the preferred valuation techniques that we'll be applying in that update for this year. Review the status of abatements that were filed for 2018 and some pending appeals that have been filed in 2017. Review some of the recent sales activity, give you some statistics to understand what is happening within the market in Laconia. And finally, review some of the foreclosure activity in recent years in the city. So Whitney Consulting Group began serving the city of Laconia on April 1st of 2019. I formed Whitney Consulting Group about 3 years ago to begin to plan for the process of serving communities like Laconia in contracted assessing. My experience is over 35 years in the valuation of property for all purposes, but specializing in taxation. And prior to November of last year, I was the director of the Municipal and Property Division at Department of Revenue Administration, where I served there for over 10 years. So I have a pretty good view of all of the activity of assessing as it relates to collecting taxes fairly. Along with myself, Emily Goldstein, who's with me this evening, has several years of experience. She most recently was the deputy assessor for the city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We're lucky to have her with us. She is a certified New Hampshire assessor and holds the designation from the Department of Revenue as a certified assessor supervisor. Very qualified. Additionally, in the city will be Mary Pinkham Langer. She recently retired from the Department of Revenue Administration with 33 years of experience valuing property for taxation purposes. Similar certifications and designations. And so we're pleased to provide you with a high level of competency in the city. Contract assessing is a little bit different than having a full-time assessor because the same person isn't going to be here in the city every day, so it takes a little bit more coordination at the staff level. It seems to be working out very well. The staff seems to appreciate and understand that we all bring different strengths to the position, and it does create sometimes a couple of day delay in being able to get an answer to a particular question, but nothing has arisen as a problem in administration. I did want to remark that there was a several months period where there was no assessor in the city, and I wanted to say how remarkable a job the city staff did. The city assessing staff did a great job of keeping things running, handling the issues that they could, and setting aside the ones that they realized that they couldn't until there was an assessor there. But there were quite a few things that had to be dealt with when we came in on April 1st, and so a lot of those included pending abatement requests, making recommendations to the Board of Assessors, dealing with a couple of pending appeal issues that needed to be negotiated and then brought forward to the Board of Assessors. The valuation for 2019, we're going to be beginning the valuation process in August. Typically, those valuations are completed by September 1st. That's the date that the final report of value is due to the Department of Revenue. This year, that update is going to be delayed by about 30 days because we had a late start. Beginning on April 1st, doing the work is different than beginning on January 1st. So we had to catch up with the work that had been set aside, and we're pretty much caught up with that now, but we're a little bit behind in being able to carry that out. We anticipated that kind of a delay, and 3 months into it, we don't see any appreciable change in that estimated date. We're going to communicate to you our preliminary results in the middle of September so that you have some eyes on the valuation results before they're relied upon to set the tax rate. Our ultimate goal is to make sure that our work does not interrupt or impede the tax rate setting process. Tax rates begin to be set by DRA on October 1st. So that's our goal, is to make sure that we're done with our work. Doesn't mean that you're going to get a tax rate on October 1st, because there are a lot of other different pieces, including the county, and it's just a lot of moving pieces that come together for the tax rate.
We'll hope for December 1st.
Let's hope sooner than that.
Yes.
The valuation update, through the process of looking at the abatement requests and some of the pending appeals, several issues that require some attention have been highlighted. And some of those are the way that location factors are consistently applied within condominium complexes. Some of them are waterfront land value inconsistencies within neighborhoods or locations. The treatment of water access rights and how those are valued for properties could be a little bit more consistent. And neighborhood value consistency is going to be a hallmark of what we're going to be looking at. The recent years' valuation technique has really focused and centered on the use of property, a style of single-family home versus its location or neighborhood. And our technique is going to be primarily focused on neighborhood and location. Our goal is going to be to have more uniform outcomes and more uniform changes within neighborhoods. And that's the focus of our update effort. And achieve market value. And that's the true test of any appraisal or reappraisal of property. So one of the things that we look at first is how many sales are, how many properties have been requesting abatements. And so over the last several years, you can see that there are anywhere between 54 and I think 89 is the highest year, and that was last year, the number of abatements that were filed at the local level. It isn't unusual to have abatements filed. My dad had a saying that he taught to me. He was an assessor too. He taught me that if you're not getting flack, then you're nowhere near the target. So if you're not getting abatement requests, then you're not close to market value. But so it's natural to encounter that number of abatement requests. Some of the abatement requests have given us a list of common themes that, that I had identified earlier. The number of sales that have occurred in each year is an important factor too, because one measure of economic value of real estate is how often are the transactions occurring. And so we track the number of sales as an important indicator of good market activity. You can see that since 2015, the trend in the number of transactions has been going up year over year, and this last year is no different. There were 519 transactions that occurred last year. We've broken those down to look at the number of sales activity that occur within certain ranges. And I'll show you a couple of charts with these same statistics. These are the underlying numbers. One thing that you can see is that not only is there a general increase in the number of sales, but there's also a change in where those sales are occurring. And the growth of sales in value ranges is not uniform. And so there are some areas of the market or segments of the market, ranges of the market, which are growing faster than others. This chart helps to understand the way that those sales will break down. For the 2019 sales are in green, and the sales for each year are in various colors. And you can see the progression of sales, especially in the center grouping, which is sales. You can probably see this better, from $100,000 to $200,000. So there's been a large amount of growth in that category, while in the $50,000 to $100,000 category, there isn't much change at all. So you can see from this graphic where some of that change is occurring. Interesting, you can see in the highest end of the category, which is over $500,000, that those sales are a little more erratic, which is not unusual because there are fewer properties that fall into that category, and so just a few transactions will change the outcome. That also has an impact on the average selling price per home, and I'll show that on another graphic in just a minute. But you'll notice in that highest category that 3 years ago was the highest number of sales over $500,000. This is just another representation of that total number of sales that occurred for the various years. And I think I misspoke. For 2019, I believe the total number was 539. But you can see that same breakdown per category, and where the growth in the sales have really occurred is in the middle of the market.
So what is gray again?
So gray is the $100,000 to $200,000 properties.
So there are a lot of homes for sale in Laconia for less than $200,000.
A lot of homes that have sold. So these are actual transactions that occurred, where a buyer and a seller came to agreement on a sale price. And valid qualified sales. They're not sales to a trust or sales between family members. These are the actual market transactions that are occurring. And that's where the majority of the growth is. So a way to understand how that impacts the total value of all property is to look at what that does to the average or the median. And so the top line on this chart will show you the average. We don't rely in mass appraisal on averages too much because averages are influenced by the outliers, by the extremes. And so we rely more on median measurements. And you can see the highest average was the year that had the highest number of sales in the highest range. And this highlights the sensitivity of that, both the number of sales that happen at the very high end of the market, but also its impact on the average. And so the median, you can see, has trended steadily upward over the last several years.
So can you read that number for us, for those of us who are sight impaired slightly? What was the 2019 median
The
number?
2019 median is $179,933.
Thank you.
Now, the sales include a lot of different types of property, and Laconia probably has more categories of different types of property than any other community in New Hampshire. And is wide-ranging from slips at a boat dock to a recreational camper in a campground to condominium units, all the way to very high-end waterfront estates. So there's just a wide array of property. One thing that we do track, and this is even more good news, I think, for the people of the city, is the number of foreclosures that occur. And annually, a number of properties will wind up in foreclosure as people can no longer afford to keep their home. But one trend that develops during large increases in market value is an ability for people to be able to navigate their way out of problems with their home financing by accessing additional equity that they now have in their property. And so we see increases in market value and decreases in foreclosure rates being tied together. So this is a good backup statistic to look at to understand that the values are increasing and that the market is reacting to those increases in market value. And from this, you can see that last year there were only 3 foreclosures in the city. And it's unfortunate for those 3 people, but that's down dramatically from where the foreclosure numbers were in 2008, 2009, 2010. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Any questions? Well, one that I would have, calling on your general experience here as opposed to necessarily commenting on Laconia itself. We hear anecdotally, at least, that waterfront property is theoretically way underpriced, way underassessed, meaning that a waterfront property sells for X, and that X might be as much as 100% more than what we had it on the books for. Is this, in your experience, I mean, is waterfront rising so fast that we can't keep up with it? Or, I'm not talking about just Laconia, but I mean in the state.
It certainly is an interesting question. So the way that a mass appraisal works is it's a mathematical model that seeks to predict a value for each individual property. And it counts on data being put into the model and then applying certain factors against all of the property descriptive information for the entire city or town. Doesn't matter the jurisdiction. that kind of model works good about 90% of the time. About 10% of the time, it's not quite a really good fit, for a couple of different reasons. One, because it's seeking to apply a mathematical solution to something which is not a mathematical problem. And so when people go out to buy a home, my experience tells me they don't start by thinking, well, I should only pay $237.50 per square foot for that house. If all I knew about the value of real estate is what I learned by sitting next to Mrs. Hamilton and watching HGTV, I would know that nobody's pulling out a calculator when they're looking at the 3 houses. When people are out there shopping, they follow their heart. They see what they like, what they love, and that's the way that they act. And so it's hard to build a mathematical model which is going to predict the desires of human beings. It's really hard. And so there's much more variability in the result at the high end. Now, it's more frequent that you'll hear about the undervaluation rather than the overvaluation, but that variability occurs at both sides.
Even on the upper end.
Yeah, yeah, and it can be a little bit more exaggerated at the upper end. But we apply a number of statistical tests to make sure that we come up with a fair result, a generally fair result, a statistically understandable fair result. So we measure what's called the price-related differential, and that helps us to understand that there is vertical equity as you move up the value ladder, that everybody is paying about the same percentage of value in their taxes. So we apply tests to make sure that that's happening. We'll be carefully focused on that. And that test, you can fail that test either way, either by overvaluing the high-end property or by undervaluing it. So it's an important test for us to be able to pass.
Counselor Bounds.
So you have a piece of property on the market that's valued at $325,000, and it sells for $425,000. What role does that play in your evaluation of that property?
Counselor, that's an excellent question. So the trick in conducting any kind of a mass appraisal is to learn what you can about the value of all property from the properties that sell. Because it's easy enough to figure out what the value of the sale property is. It's sold. And so we know what the value of that property is. But what we try to do is extract the market influence information from that sale and then apply it out to all of the properties, including that property. So rather than just dialing a value to the sale price, extracting and learning what we can about the value of property and then applying it to all of the properties in the same way.
So, Counsel, did that answer your question?
I think it does. It may affect more
So is the
immediate-
new value for that property $425,000?
So
Probably not precisely, because it's going to be valued the same way as all of the other properties.
And that's not what I heard. I heard that you're going to take that $425,000 and you're going to factor it across the board to all, I don't know whether it's all similar properties or to all properties in the city of Laconia or how that works. But that wasn't my question. My question was more specifically, how does the sales impact the valuation that you do? And I think you answered that question. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Counselor Lippman?
So, forgive me for not knowing the precise term of art in your profession, but we have historically had some review by DRA of our valuation process, and in terms of figure out what the measure is called, but like it has to be within 105 or 110. I can't remember the
Coefficient
Sure.
of disbursement.
coefficient of disbursement, if that is the
Yeah.
correct term of art. But in terms of, we looked in a good place previously when we had that done. Was it 2 years ago? Manager?
I think that's reviewed annually, and I think we look at the sales ratio, the price-related differential, the PRD, and then the coefficient of dispersion are some of the several. And we provided those numbers for you. We can certainly refresh your memory, which may click with you a little bit more after hearing tonight's presentation, but those are the key ones.
I guess my question is if my recollection was correct, they were pretty good numbers, and I guess just want to, coming in and evaluating and taking a look so far, do you see any reason why we wouldn't expect to see good numbers where we are today?
Well, the leading predictor of how the statistics will turn out are the number of sales to work with. And so this large base of sales gives us a good understanding of market value. And so, no, I don't see any reason to think that the statistical measurements, which is the ratio, the level of assessment, which should be between 90 and 110% of market value, the COD, which is how precise that number is, and that should be less than 20%. Typically, it's good if it's less than 10, but not less than 5. And I expect we'll probably find it within that range. And a price-related differential that indicates that there is no significant vertical bias.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your being here.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you both.
Okay. On to Mayor's report, a couple of items. First, glorious news for those of you who may not have heard it as of yet, including our television audience. The Diocese of Manchester announced today that the sale of the St. Joseph Church is off. They issued a press release this afternoon. I'll read just the couple of paragraphs here. Diocese of Manchester and the potential buyers of the St. Joseph property have mutually agreed to terminate the purchase and sales agreement first announced in early May. The bishop is fully aware of the strong sentiments expressed by many. With the sale of the property now postponed, the bishop has directed the appropriate members of the diocesan staff to work with the pastor and city officials to approach the matter and the property itself with those sentiments clearly in mind. Further down, representatives of the parish and the diocese are planning to meet with city officials to discuss such a subdivision, or they're talking about subdividing, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. They're talking about subdividing the church property from the other two properties, or at least two properties. I don't know if where the parking lot comes into effect. But all of everything from the Buzzell Mansion, which is now the rectory, to the school is all one property, including the parking lot. So they're talking about subdividing that in some way, and they'll be meeting with our planning department and the city manager soon. I believe one meeting has already been scheduled to talk about what procedure could be used to subdivide the church out of that remaining property. I'm assuming that perhaps I shouldn't be assuming that means that they would still try to sell the remaining property, not including the church, at least for now. The church would be a separate lot.
Well, I have two comments. One, it's delightful to hear that the imminent demolition of the church is off. Don't get me wrong. But the fact is that they've still applied for a demolition permit.
I understand they've asked for an extension of that, or or extension of the consideration from the Heritage Commission.
Yeah, and I'll probably just speak to it at a 30,000-foot view because I don't have the exact benchmark dates in front of me. But generally speaking, a building of a certain age and historical significance needs to go through the Heritage Commission process, and there's certain benchmarks that have to be met. Prior to this news today, the diocese had submitted a request through the planning staff to the Heritage Commission, and Dean, please jump in if I get something wrong here, basically asking the Heritage Commission to not start the process at their next meeting. and delay it a little bit as the diocese is working through some things. That had only positive results if the Heritage Commission chose to do that, because that means that instead of the clock starting at whatever meeting date they've scheduled for July, that at the request of the diocese, if that action was taken, it wouldn't be taken until the August meeting. So at a minimum, it bought an extra roughly 30 days in the process, and it didn't have the Heritage Commission relinquish any of their rights. And I know that our planning director, Dean Trefethen, shared that request with the chair of the Heritage Commission at the end of last week, I believe. So that's where that stood, but that was prior to this press release today.
Okay. That's not the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is that the demolition permit has been applied for. And so that anything we do with the Historic Commission, we have to be very careful about in terms of what the status of that is. Because my second point is that it may impact whatever plans the diocese has for the subdivision, what it's going to look like, because assume that the demolition permit were somehow became invalid and we started all over, that property would then be subject to, if we did adopt it, an Historic Commission, that property would now be subject to the Historic Commission. And the demolition permit would apply exclusively to St. Joseph's Church, so that any development plans that anybody had with respect to the rest of the property that they subdivided, if we adopted an Historic Commission, would then be subject to the Historic Commission rules. So I
All right,
think...
so let me read one sentence that I skipped over here, okay?
Okay.
I didn't read the whole thing. By subdivision of the land, the church edifice and its designated property, new property boundary, can be retained and its ultimate use be determined upon mutual agreement between the parish and the diocese. The two remaining parcels could then be sold without infringement on the church. So that seems to say to me that they have no intention of going ahead with the demolition.
I'll take them at their word. I'll take them at their word that they're not going to go ahead with the demolition. All I'm saying is, if somebody changes their mind, the demolition permit is on the table and is a trump card for anything we do with the Historic Commission. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't believe the diocese, and I don't want to get into a discussion about whether I should or whether the council should. I think we should take them at their word at this point. The second point I'm making is that when we consider the adoption of the Historic Commission, and it's going to come before the planning board is going to be dealing with it, and I think I wasn't at the last planning board meeting, and I haven't had an opportunity to review the minutes yet, but I think that the Historic Commission was not sent to a public hearing, but was rather reserved and sent back to the planning department for further refinement, so that the actual document that we had would look more like Laconia than Durham, and those kinds of things. But if we adopt an Historic Commission, I'm not saying we should or whether we shouldn't, but those rules would apply to any subdivision that the diocese worked out with respect to prospective sales. So that property would now be subject to the Historic Commission. And that may or may not have an impact on the sale of the property or how we do it. I'm not making any predictions. I'm just saying that
Well,
that's...
and they would need to be advised of that when these meetings that they intend to hold with, quote, city officials take place.
And this is just, I heard about this afternoon, so this is not like a well-thought-out and researched reaction to all of this. This is just my from-the-hip kind of reaction about what impact this may have. And I'm just bringing them up, so...
All right, well, I I still believe that congratulations and
Absolutely.
celebration are in order, and I think on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank and congratulate all the people who have been involved in this very dedicated effort to preserve the church, including at least a couple of members of this council. So thank you, gentlemen, who have been very involved in that effort, and to all of those of you out there who did the same. So our hats off to all of you, and a big thank you to all of you at this point in time. Second thing I would like to point
So
out.
I'm not misunderstood. I agree with that.
I know you do. Second thing I'd like to mention quickly is just another thank you, and that is to all of the people who contributed to organizing and pulling off our 4th of July celebration, the parade and the festivities, music concert, et cetera, at O-Pee-Chee Park, and the fireworks that followed. I know that there's a tremendous number of people who are involved in this every year, and I'd just like to, I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but I'm going to personally reach out and thank Beth and Jared from the Celebrate Laconia organization for organizing this, to Chet Silly, who did his usual work as he's done for decades now, and for Amy Levisic, our new official Parks and Rec director, who did a sensational job as well. And I'd also like to give a shout out, and I'm sure Amy would second this, to Eric Grant and the Eric Grant Band, who perform every year a 5-hour-long concert with a couple of breaks at a very reasonable rate for the city of Laconia. They're the annual entertainment there, and they put on a great show there. So on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank Eric and his band for their continued participation in our 4th of July ceremony. And finally, the fireworks themselves, I think, played to rave reviews. Some have said that they thought it was the best fireworks display that we've ever had in Laconia. So be that as it may, I'm not sure how you judge that, but I will say that the finale was quite spectacular. And if this were still 1962, and I remember 1962, as several of the rest of you on this table do, some of you don't, but I certainly do, that if this were still 1962, at the moment of the finale, I would have sworn the Russians were attacking. I mean, it felt like Armageddon as the sky exploded, so.
And I was living across from O-Pee-Chee Park in 1962.
Mayor, I think Tony Felch also deserves a shout out.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, thank you. I knew I would miss somebody that was integral to the thing. You're right. All right, so thank you one and all for a very successful 4th of July. And with that, we are on to committee reports, committee business. I know the Finance Committee has a meeting tonight, right, immediately following this one, and on July 22nd, the Lands and Buildings Committee is going to meet at 6:15 to discuss the structural study of the parking garage. Is that correct? Any other committee business that we need to take care of tonight?
Don't we have a parking committee meeting on August 12th or something?
August 12th, yes.
Okay.
6 o'clock, right?
6 o'clock.
How about liaison reports? Any liaison reports tonight?
I missed the meeting, so I don't know.
You what?
I missed the meeting, so I don't know.
You missed the planning board meeting?
I missed the planning board meeting.
Wow.
I was traveling.
You were traveling, okay. Let's see. Okay, so we are on to citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. Is there anybody in the audience tonight who wishes to address the council on any matter that is on tonight's agenda? Any matter that is on tonight's agenda? No? Okay, we're on to Mr. Myers and the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try and be very brief here, as I know we've got a lengthy agenda still ahead of us. I want to echo the mayor's comments on the news about St. Joseph's Church today. Very exciting, I think, and a very positive turn of events, and also for all the volunteer efforts that went in on the 4th of July. It was a tremendous effort across the board, and thank you to those folks. Two additional thank yous, if you will. Wes Anderson and his team for a very successful implementation of the reverse angle parking downtown, from the messaging, working with the engineers, adding a little extra width for the spaces, the reader boards, getting out there. It's gone seamlessly. So Wes, to you and your team, thank you for that effort, and we're leading the way in the state on reverse angle parking, so that's an exciting thing.
We're cutting edge stuff.
There we are. Second one is, I'm sure you're all aware, the motorcycle ride that came together very quickly and originated in Laconia on Saturday. Typically, an event that size would take months and months of planning through all of the local departments as well as the state departments, everybody from 911 to Homeland Security, Emergency Management, to Department of Transportation, state police, and more at the state level. But having sat in on some of those calls and some of those conversations, a lot of the work really took place at the local level. State, not to minimize the effort of the state, but a lot of the local work was with local officials. So certainly, great appreciation for their efforts to Chief Canfield at Laconia Police Department, Chief Beati with Laconia Fire Department, and Captain Grayton from Police Department played a huge role in that, and to have an unofficial number of over 4,000 motorcycles stage and come in from all areas of the state and converge on one point through various routes, and then turn around and get them mobilized and get them off very safely. We had one single motorcycle accident that occurred on Roller Coaster Road as they were leaving with non-life-threatening injuries, and reports that I heard, and along with photos I've seen from State Police helicopter, is that when the initial riders were going on the on-ramp in Route 93 in New Hampton, riders were still leaving Watson Road in Laconia. So that's a 10.5-mile distance. Again, significant undertaking and very positive results from all those crews, so thank you. All right, I will go on to my financial and operational trends report included in your packet. I'm going to go through this quickly. The assessing building permit reports for the assessing year beginning April 1, we're pretty much on par where we were last year, but if you can look to where we were 2 years ago, we're half that value, so we're a little bit under $4 million. Fire and police continue to be very busy with calls on a number of areas. The public assistance, for many months I've been pointing out how we've been trending higher. No particular rhyme or reason. A couple of things fell a certain way, and the June numbers were significantly by far the lowest of the year. So to staff who works in that area, and Glenn oversees welfare, good job there. Going down to the bottom of the second page of the report, we have the property tax collection. So we've collected for the first half of 2019. The official due date for property taxes was not until July 1st, so this covers us through June 30th. I would expect by the time we get the July numbers for the actual due date, and then whatever's trickled in shortly thereafter, that will be at a much higher percentage than the 75.5%. Again, preliminary numbers still to be finalized, but we think these are fairly solid on motor vehicle registration. We ended the year just short of $3.2 million, which is up from a year ago of $250,000. So we've hit the numbers, and I know we always start out a little bit slower in the first half of the year, but registrations by vehicles and leases and for some other reasons really come on strong through the final quarter of the year. So we've hit those numbers. All of the overtime information is there. We've got, Glenn, help me, we've got one more payroll that ran
the first week of July.
Ran the first week of July. That was for work that occurred in June 30th. So some of these numbers might change a little bit once we finalize the report and work on closing the year end. But again, everything looks very solid, and actually a reduction when you compare across the board in overtime for the 12 months tracked here versus the prior year. On the bottom of page 4, again, you can see the existing balances for the various trust funds. Really want to focus on page 5 and page 6 of the report. So the boat taxes, again, were about $11,000 over estimated revenue. So instead of the $85,000 budgeted, we ended up a little over $96,000. We expect that number might tick up a little bit too, as some of our boat agents collected money in the last bit of June that probably will still come through and filter in and be recorded with us. So, I mean, that's the highest boat registration number that we've seen basically since the state changed the policy of not requiring boats to only be registered at the local level. The state got into the business, if you will, a number of years ago, and when somebody mails in boat registration money, that stays with the state as opposed to being kept locally. So that's why we strongly encourage local residents to get their boats done here, because the money goes back into the community and supports some of the work that's done to support our boating operations and the milfoil and water quality and all of that stuff here in Laconia. The final one will be on the ambulance. I'll start with the last page of the report, so the expenses. Again, I expect this bottom line number to tick up a little bit when we cover that last payroll period and some other expenses, including the collection expense that QuickMed gets as a % of collecting revenue for the city. So right now, as of June 30th, as a soft number, we stood at just about $915,000 in expense year to date against an estimated budget of $1,025,000. Looking in the crystal ball, we probably can expect that $915,000 number to trend up to maybe $935,000, $940,000 by the time you factor in a couple of the variables I just mentioned. So I think at a minimum we're going to be $80,000, $85,000 under budget on the expense side. And again, extrapolating out the revenue on the bottom of page 5, knowing that we've got some month we've just collected. First of all, that June number of only 210 billable trips, we know that will go up because some of those trips occurred on the final days of June and hadn't been entered into the system yet. So we know the amount billed will be going up. And again, if we take just an average collection of 66%, which seems to be where we are for the first 6 months of the year, and run the numbers, the revenue is going to come in above that expense estimate that I just shared with you. Additionally, we've got a small amount of revenue that's not shown on this sheet that came from our deputy chief of EMS for running some of the training programs for the paramedic refresher and the EMTA courses. That doesn't show up in there. And then offline is once we truly have written off an account that we're not going to have success collecting it through our collection agency, is going to a billing agency to go after those long outstanding accounts. And that money isn't showing up in this account, and that will start to see trend in it. We don't anticipate it being huge dollars, but again, knowing where we stand today and that knowing that we need a couple of months of run out on the final revenue collection, we're very confident that the revenue is going to exceed. And that includes putting away $50,000 into the reserve account for funding an ambulance replacement and basically on a 5-year schedule. So that $50,000 has already been gone over to the reserve. So we've hit all the benchmarks we had hoped to on the EMS for first year, and within the budget before you tonight, you've got some minor modifications, but I think our bottom line number is still on the expense side at that $1,025,000. So very pleased with the efforts of everybody involved. Glenn and the finance department and working with the billing companies and knowing that business intimately, and in particular Sean Riley over at the fire department. So I'm happy to take any questions anybody may have on any of that.
Questions or comments for the manager? Councilor Hosmer.
Just one question. Thanks, Scott and Glenn, for the work on the EMS billing report. I may have missed this, but what are we estimating is the final number for payments for the fiscal year?
Total revenue or just on this one sheet of payments? If you're looking just as if we took 66% of the billable number and said that's been our trend on a month-over basis, that alone is going to put us in at $945,000. On top of that, we'll have the training revenue that we received that's not part of this mix that Deputy Riley and his team are doing in-house to recertify other people, and then whatever's coming in offline from this, from that collection agency, separate from the billing company that handles the accounts for the first 90 or 120 days.
That's correct.
Before they, either we get to that point and the user has not responded to any of our communications or has not set up a payment plan. If somebody's on a payment plan, their money still is coming through this billing report. If we've moved them off and kind of written them off and said, collection, it's your turn to go now, that revenue is not showing up here, but it's relatively new, and I can share those numbers with you as we get a little bit of traction with them. So
Okay.
all in
so-
all, I would say revenue is going to come in over $950,000.
Okay. And we had planned, and I'm sorry, what was our estimate? What we budgeted for, what do we anticipate
We
coming in for
did, we did
revenues?
$1,025,000 on both
Okay.
sides of the equation. So the expense offset this being a special revenue account. That's what we did across the
Oh,
board.
it's going to
for-
be a break even at about 100,000 less than projected.
Yes,
Good, thank you.
you're welcome.
Scott, why are the write-offs so high?
That's an account that after the 120 days, they haven't paid, they haven't responded to us. So it's taken from QuickMed, who does our billing and our routine collection, and it goes over to a different collection agency to go after with little different approaches. So it's not that we've completely written it off our books, but it's gone over to the collection agency. When we look at peer communities who have followed a similar model, who are billing 10 to 15%
That's correct.
of what goes over to that secondary billing agency is the usual success rate in collection. So if any given month we've written off $30,000 that we've had no response from to somebody after the first 90 or 120 days, those accounts get moved to the billing agency, the collection agency. You know, the likelihood is we'll see somewhere around $3,000, $4,000 off of that book of business, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
And I should add that both of these companies are working on a percentage of collection, so they've got just as much incentive to be successful in collecting because that's how they're getting paid. They're getting paid as a percent of what they're able to bring in off of the billing. So, they've, like I say, they've got skin in the game.
Okay, we're on to new business. We have just one item of new business tonight, but a very important one, and that is the first reading of Resolution 2019-19, approval of bonding to finance the repair and restoration of the historic Colonial Theater. I'm on page 54 of your packet, and the actual resolution is on page 55. So the way we're proceeding, I know we talked about this at length at our last meeting, is tonight we're scheduled to pass this resolution that's on page 55 on first reading and schedule a public hearing on the same for our next meeting. So at the next meeting on the 22nd, we would have a public hearing and would proceed to if desired, to the second and final vote for this bond authorization, which would take a 2/3 majority vote of the councilors. Okay? So we're talking here about, for the sake of our audience, at its meeting on June 24th, the council instructed the city manager to move forward with securing a bond in the amount of $6.7 million to fund the restoration and repair of the historic Colonial Theater. Following that meeting, bid requests were distributed to local institution with a bid proposal due on July 12th of this year. Institutions were asked to provide bid proposals for both a 20 and 25-year term borrowing. Okay, the fiscal impact for this will be known once bids are received, but is not expected to exceed $230,000 in fiscal year 21 or 20. So you have the motions there in front of you. The first motion would be, first of all, are there any questions or comments before we get to motions? All right, the first motion to be in order would be to move or waive the reading tonight of Resolution 19 in its entirety and to read tonight by title only. Made by Councilor Hosmer, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of waiving the reading of the entire resolution, please raise their hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Next up would be a motion to approve on first reading, Resolution 2019-19, a resolution relative to authorizing the city manager to take any actions necessary to issue bonds for the repair and restoration of the historic Colonial Theater in the amount of $6,700,000. Counselor Haynes makes that motion. Counselor Bound seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor of first reading, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries unanimously. And finally, tonight, a motion be in order to schedule a public hearing during the regular council meeting on July 22nd, 2019, regarding the issuance of a bond to finance the repair and restoration of the historic Colonial Theater in the amount of $6,700,000. Counselor Hamel makes that motion. Counselor Bound seconds it. Any discussion of scheduling the public hearing? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries. And we'll take this up again at our next meeting. Thank you.
Question. Procedurally, will we, assuming a public hearing and the vote holds up, will we need a finance committee meeting the night of the?
Yes.
So I'd like
Same night.
that following the regular council meeting.
All right,
Propose
Counselor Littman moves to schedule a meeting of the Finance Committee immediately after our on July 22nd council meeting to take up discussion of terms of the $6.7 million borrowing.
Yes, if it's approved, yes.
There a second? Counselor Hamel seconds that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries unanimously.
So
All right.
So we'll deal with whether it's a 20-year or 25-year bond next meeting, is that right?
I'm sorry?
We'll deal with whether it's a 20-year or a 25-year bond at the next
We'll have that
meeting.
information. Well, that'll be up to the Finance Committee, correct?
Ultimately, it's the Finance Committee. I think it would make sense to present it here, so there's a discussion and
Yeah.
make sure there's consensus, but yes, we will have that available.
Okay, we're on to a full unfinished business agenda tonight. First item is the proposed, wait a minute, did I skip one?
No, you're on 21A.
No, anticipated funds, that's right. Proposed amendment to Laconia City Charter for acceptance and expenditure of unanticipated funds made available during the fiscal year pursuant to RSA 31:95B. I'm on page 56 with the resolution that we are asked to pass on page 57. And do we have an amendment to that?
I do not have an amendment written in front of me, but I'm happy to offer up some language. So I think, even though it was very clear when the council adopted 3195B at the May 13th, 2019 meeting, it said in bold, this would not be enacted immediately as it's the first step of a process which would include a charter amendment ballot question which would need to be approved by voters in November 2019. And we said it further down in the motions and that type of stuff. So what I'm hearing is the concern is on page 57, the bullet point number 4 right now reads, the Laconia City Council hereby approves the proposed language addition as set forth above and moves it forward through the charter amendment process. What I've been led to believe is that if we continued that sentence and said something along the lines of, which will include a vote at the municipal, an affirmative vote at the municipal election in November 2019. I think that would cover it one more time, that the city council is not changing the charter. It is occurring through an affirmative vote at the municipal election in 2019. So I think if we made that as a motion to amend number 4, then it would be appropriate to go through the motions that are on the staff report, Mr. Mayor.
So we don't have to, we can waive a first reading and all that stuff.
I think if you make that motion first.
Make the motion
Right,
first.
I don't think that yeah, I don't think it changes very much. Substantively, there I go, I got it. Changes the intent of it. It's just adding a little bit of extra clarifying language. So I think if you make that amendment to the resolution, you're still fine to waive the reading of the resolution, move to approve the language, and move it to a public hearing.
All right, so we require 2 readings for this tonight and at our next meeting.
Right, so by amending it now, you're actually amending it before the first reading. So that makes the first reading valid to go to the public hearing.
All right. So the first thing we're going to do then, and for the sake of our audience, this has to do with unanticipated funds that become available during the fiscal year for amounts under $10,000. Under current city charter, we have to have a very formal process to accept even a $100 donation from somebody, including holding a public hearing as to whether or not we want to accept $100. So basically, what this would do would be allow us to skip that. Under state law, allow us to skip that process and simply have the administration accept small amounts of money like that.
Although it still does need to appear on an agenda, but it's just more for a consented action item. It doesn't require a public hearing, which needs notice and advertising and
But
other steps.
we need to change the city charter to do this, and only the voters can change the city charter. So in effect, what we're doing over the next couple of meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, is authorizing this to be put on the ballot for November, so the voters can vote on it.
Yeah, short term, yes. There's a whole process where now, if you approve this tonight, the language gets submitted down to the AG's office and the Secretary of State's office for their review to make sure that it complies with state law and isn't in conflict with our charter. They've got a chance to review it, and there still comes back for another public hearing later on this summer as well on it. So this is just starting the process of getting the language approved to go forward to the voters.
Okay, so first up, I'm going to ask for a motion, we'll try to muddle through this, a motion to waive the reading of Resolution 20 in its entirety tonight and to read by title
No.
only.
I think we got to do it the other way around.
I think you want to
Do the
amend
amendment
number
first.
4 on the
I
resolution.
move to amend paragraph
It's
4.
not on the table, how can we amend something that's not on the table?
I'm moving to amend it.
There's nothing on the table to amend. Hasn't been put in, the motion hasn't been made.
I agree with you, Mr. Murray. I agree with you.
Pay attention here.
No, I gave him the wrong information. I agree with you. I think you need to get it on the table first and then offer up the amendment. You're correct.
All right, so do we need to read
I
the whole
was
thing
just relying
tonight,
on
or
the
can
city
we still
manager.
waive
You can
that?
move to waive it, yeah.
Okay.
So make me look bad, Scott, thank you.
Oh, that was on me.
Okay, a motion in order to waive reading of Resolution 20, please. Counselor Hosmer, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise a hand. Thank you. All right. So then we need a motion now to get the resolution as currently drafted on the table. Then we'll entertain a motion to amend it. Okay? All right. So a motion would be in order to approve the language in Chapter 5:06 as presented in Resolution 20. Counselor Hosmer makes a motion. Counselor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All right. Now, an amendment to item number 4 would be in order.
Got to vote on what we just did, though, right?
Nope, that got the resolution out. Now you're going to vote to amend the resolution.
All right. And what's the language going to be?
So number 4 would read, "The Laconia City Council hereby approves the proposed language addition as set forth above and moves it forward through the charter amendment process to the voters at the municipal election in November of 2019.
Okay.
So moved.
Counselor Bounds makes that motion. Counselor Haynes seconds that motion. All right, so now we're voting on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise a hand. We have 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries unanimously. All right, so now Resolution 20 has been amended, so we're going to vote. So, yeah, we're back to the original motion as amended now, to approve the first reading of the resolution as amended. Okay? All right, so all in favor of approving the amended resolution, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Okay, so now the amendment has been amended and will appear as amended at our next meeting and in front of the public hearing. So the last motion we need to make is to move to schedule a public hearing on July 22nd, 2019 regarding the proposed amendment to Laconia City Charter, Chapter 5:06 during the regular city council meeting and to gather public input prior to adoption. Someone moved to schedule that public hearing. Counselor Lippman does. A second. I've got 3 hands here. Counselor Haynes seconds that motion. Any discussion on scheduling the public hearing? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we got through that. Next up is second reading and approval of amendment 2000, of ordinance 2019-235, 21.1, relative to amending 235 zoning Article 4. Okay, and we're on second reading. We had the first reading of this at our last meeting. We had the public hearing tonight, so this is the final vote in terms of creating a new section in the zoning ordinance that introduces performance zoning. Okay, everybody know what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
So this is the final vote
This is
on
it.
performance zoning.
This is it.
All right,
Let's perform.
Da, 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 da.
so any questions or comments before we get to motions on performance zoning? All right. The first motion would be, in order, would be to move a second reading of ordinance 2019-235-21.1, amending chapter 235 zoning, article 4 overlay districts to add a new section 235-21.1 performance zoning overlay district and accompanying maps. Would you like the honor of Counselor Lippman?
Procedurally, I think the clerk has a.
Could you waive the reading of the
We haven't
ordinance
done
in
that.
its entirety?
Did I skip that?
Yeah.
Yep, I'm sorry. All right. I'll try again. So I'd like a motion to, or the entire ordinance is printed on page 59 and 60 of your report. So the first motion to be in order would be to waive a reading of the ordinance tonight and to read by title only. Counselor Hosmer happily makes that motion. Counselor Hamel seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're on to second reading of ordinance 2019-235-21.1, amending chapter 235 zoning, article 4 overlay districts to add a new section 235-21.1 performance zoning overlay district and accompanying maps.
That's Henry's motion.
Now, Counselor Lippman makes that motion. Counselor Bounds seconds that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of second reading, please raise a hand. I have 6 votes in affirmative, that motion carries. And finally, a motion be in order to approve ordinance 2019-235-21.1, amending chapter 235 zoning, article 4 overlay districts to add a new section 235-21.1 performance zoning overlay district and accompanying maps. Counselor Lippman would make that motion. Counselor Bounds seconds that motion. Any discussion on approving this ordinance on a final vote? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion carries unanimously, and congratulations, we now have a performance zoning ordinance
All right.
for the first time.
Now,
I would call that progress. Thank you.
I am going to do something now.
You are what?
I'm going to do something now.
You're going to do something.
Yes, I'm
Is
going
that-
to leave.
Is a
Something
first.
that's not on the agenda, I
Something
think.
that's not on the agenda, I'm going to leave. I'll give you a brief explanation. I traveled this weekend to see over the holidays to see my daughter. I did not get back in until 3:30 this morning.
You're fading rapidly, is that what you're trying to tell
I'm
us?
fading rapidly. I went to work today, and I don't expect any sympathy from the counselor from Ward 1.
From your right.
And I'm gonna, from my right. And
All right,
I'm a
would
mean,
the
petty,
clerk
vindictive
note,
man. You
please,
better
that-
know that.
I'll ask the clerk to note, please, that Counselor Bounds is excused as of 9:07 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a note, I support the budget that we have. Rock and roll.
You just don't want to listen to me read all that stuff.
Well, that's one of the reasons. That's the truth.
Can't blame you for that. Okay.
Good job on the performance stuff.
You too.
Next up is a proposed, consideration of the proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for a grant from Lakes Region Community Developers. I'm on page 61 now. proposed application of Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 for Lakes Region Community Developers to renovate a 4-unit building located at 8587 Elm Street and 21 Winter Street, Unit 5. And
We're just going to, we're going to strike that last part for the
yeah,
Winter
We'll
Street.
get it on the, then we'll amend it once we get it on the floor, because as it is written now is what was noticed to the public. Okay, a motion be in order to approve the proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 for Lakes Region Community Developers to renovate a 4-unit building located at 85 Elm Street and 21 Winter Street, Unit 5 in Laconia, and to authorize the city manager to sign and submit the application upon approval of the CDBG application, and to authorize the city manager to execute any documents which may be necessary to effectuate the CDBG contract and any amendments thereto. Someone please make that motion. Counselor Lippman, second by Counselor Hosmer. All right, now an amendment would be in order to strike from the motion the words "and 21 Winter Street, Unit 5. That motion made by Counselor Lippman, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Any discussion of that amendment? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. So the amendment is now amended, and we're back to consider any debate, discussion about the motion as amended. All right, we'll vote. All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. I think we got that right. Thank you. Okay, next up is the issue of the Residential Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Plan. Motion be in order to approve the Residential Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Plan for the proposed Lakes Region Community Development CDBG project. Someone care to make that motion? Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Hosmer. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. We're moving right along. Okay. We are on to the budget. Glory be. Okay, and all the rest of our business tonight, official business tonight on the agenda concerns the budget that we've been working on the past several months. So we've already had, to refresh our audience's memory and mine as well, we've already passed the budget on first reading. Tonight before us is second reading and final reading. We're not required to do this tonight. If for any reason we did not want to, we could postpone this decision or parts of the decision until our next meeting. Hopefully that won't be necessary, but it's legal and possible to do so. Okay. Now, we have some amendments, so this is going to be a little bit messy here tonight again, because we've made some changes at our last meeting, and all of you have a copy, or should have a copy, of this multi-page memorandum that was distributed to you. It says Staff Report, July 8, 2019. Okay, so that is the detail, page by page, of the changes that need to be made, that we made, or have been made by new information coming forward in terms of grant receipt and whatnot. The first page has to do with the general fund, and these are all the changes that we made or agreed to by consensus to the general fund at our last meeting, okay? So what we're gonna need to do is the general fund, correct me if I'm wrong here now, the general fund resolution is on page 66. That's resolution 06. So we'll need again to waive the reading in its entirety, then get it on the floor for second reading as proposed, and then amend it, because the numbers need to be amended to reflect the changes that we've made, okay? Everybody got that? Any questions or comments or concerns before we get to motions? Okay, first motion be in order would be to waive a resolution, the reading of resolution 06 in its entirety tonight, and to read by title only. I have that motion, please. Counselor Lippman makes that motion. Counselor Hosmer seconds the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor of waiving the reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion carries unanimously. Okay. So next we need to get the resolution on the table so we can amend So a motion be in order to move the second reading of Resolution 16 relative to making itemized appropriations for the general fund for the fiscal year beginning July 21, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. I have that motion, please. Thank you. Counselor Cheney makes the motion. Counselor Hosmer seconds it. All right, now, if you'll turn your attention to page 66. A motion would be in order under the general fund to make the grand total appropriation change to $75,766,575 and to change the total revenue number to $29,589,304, leaving the balance to be raised by taxes as printed earlier, the same number, $46,177,271. Someone make that motion, please. Counselor Lippman, is there a second? Counselor Hamel, thank you. All right, any discussion of the amended numbers?
Just for the public's benefit, it continues to be a tax cap compliant budget.
Yes, it does.
Any further discussion? All right, so we're voting on the amendment now. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, the motion carries unanimously. All right, so now the resolution has been amended to the new numbers, and we're ready for a final vote. All those in favor of adopting Resolution 6 as amended, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we're on to Resolution 7, relative to making itemized appropriations for anticipated grants. Again, this is another same procedure we'll go through here. We need to amend the number because the police department has applied for and it will be receiving a $60,000 grant that was not anticipated when the budget was.
And this is the single page that was on your table that updates that tonight.
Okay. All right, so motion be in order to waive the reading of Resolution 7, its entirety tonight, and to read by title only. Have that motion, please. Counselor Cheney, thank you. Seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any discussion? All those in favor of waiving the reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. All right, so now we need to get Resolution 7 on the table. So we need a motion to move the second reading of Resolution 7 relative to itemized appropriations for anticipated grants for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Cheney seconds it. All right, now, to call your attention to page 68, we need to change the two numbers that are on page 68 dealing with anticipated grants and total revenues. The amended numbers for both of those numbers now will be $2,196,890.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're going to work on the single sheet that was on your table. This is the one that came out just today with the police grant.
Oh, this is different. I'm sorry. All right, the amendment that would be in order would be to increase those two numbers on page 66, appropriation and revenues, to $2,256,890. Someone make that motion. Thank you. Counselor Hosmer makes the motion, seconded by Counselor Hamel. All right, so this is the amendment now. All those in favor of the amendment, any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. So Resolution 7 has now been amended, and we're ready for a final vote on not final. Did we take all the votes necessary? We have 2 more votes to take, right, on this one?
I think you waived it, then you voted on the amendment, you voted, and now you're going to vote on it. You got it on the floor, and then you got the amendment, now you're getting ready to vote on the
Then we gotta vote
resolution
on
as
it
amended.
again.
As amended in its entirety. So you're basically working on number 3 and just saying as amended. The third motion as amended.
We're on moving the second reading right now, and it's been amended on second reading. So now we're voting on the second reading. So once we pass this, we still have to have one more vote.
Right, I think you just took that vote, though.
We did.
Right. So now you're on the final one to approve it.
So we voted on second reading. All right. All right, so now, a motion be in order to approve Resolution 7 on final reading relative to making appropriations for anticipated grants for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019, and terminating June 30, 2020. All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. All right, we're on to Resolution 8. Second reading and approval of Resolution 2019-8 relative to making itemized appropriations for the sewer fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Same procedure here, we need an amendment. So the first motion to be in order would be to waive a reading of Resolution 8 in its entirety and to read tonight by title only. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. All right, next up, we need to get on the floor to move second reading of Resolution 8 relative to the sewer fund as presented. Have that motion, please. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion, seconded by Counselor Lippman. All right, now, an amendment would be in order. Call your attention to page 70, to the numbers printed on page 70. For appropriations and revenues, that number will change by amendment to $3,993,085, 085. Okay, and the capital outlay number will change to $1,435,000 even. That amendment is made by Counselor Hosmer, seconded by Counselor Cheney. Any discussion on the amendment?
Just technically, is it the less total revenues need to change too?
We'd like them, yeah, so I think the mayor said the first two numbers are both going to be the $3,993,085.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. All right, now the motion has been amended, so we're going to vote on Resolution 8 as amended, second reading. That motion, please. Counselor Hamel, seconded by Counselor Hosmer. Any discussion on the amended motion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And then finally, final reading of Resolution 08 relative to making appropriations for the sewer fund for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Cheney seconds it. Any discussion? Final reading. All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, and the sewer fund budget has been approved on final reading. Okay, next up is the water fund. We have no amendments on the water fund. So the first motion that would be in order would be to waive a reading of Resolution 2009 relative to making itemized appropriations for the water fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Lippman seconds it. Any discussion of waiving the reading? Please raise a hand. So, all those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Next up would be second reading of Resolution 29. Someone make motion to approve it on second reading. That's Counselor Lippman makes the motion. Counselor Hosmer seconds it. Any discussion of approving Resolution 9 on second reading? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And finally, a motion be in order to approve Resolution 2009 on final reading relative to making appropriations for the water fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. Counselor Hamel makes that motion. Counselor Hosmer seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor of the final vote on Resolution 09 relative to the water fund, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Our hands are getting tired, I can tell. Okay, we are on to the Internal Services Fund, and we do have a small amendment on that one. So we got to go through the amendment process. This is for the last time, I believe, on that. All right, so the first motion be in order to be a waiver reading of Resolution 10 relative to making itemized appropriation for the Internal Services Fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. Someone care to make that motion? Counselor Haynes makes the motion, seconded by Counselor Hosmer. Any discussion? All those in favor of waiving the reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Next up, we need to get the resolution on the floor, so a motion would be in order to move a second reading of Resolution 10 as presented relative to the Internal Services Fund. Counselor Hamel makes that motion. Counselor Hosmer seconds it. Any discussion? First of all, an amendment would be in order. Call your attention to page 74. Both numbers printed there, one for appropriation and one for total revenues, will be changed to $1,131,464. Can I have that as a formal motion, please? Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Hamel seconds it. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Resolution number 10 has been amended. So now we're having a second reading vote on Resolution 10. Any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And finally, a final vote on Resolution 10 relative to making, as amended, relative to making appropriations for the Internal Services Fund for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion, seconded by someone. Counselor Haynes, thank you. Any discussion on final reading? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries as well. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to go. No more amendments, unless you want to make one. All right, we are to resolution number 11, a resolution relative to making itemized appropriations for the Special Revenue Fund Motorcycle Week for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. Motion be in order to waive reading of Resolution 10 and 11 in its entirety and to read by title only. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Next up would be a motion to be in order to approve the second reading of Resolution 11 relative to the Special Revenue Fund called Motorcycle Week. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Hamel seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving second reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And a motion now be in order for final resolution, a vote on Resolution 11 relative to making appropriations for the Special Revenue Fund Motorcycle Week for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. Would you like to make that motion?
I'd love to make that motion.
Get that hand right up there. Counselor Cheney makes that motion. Counselor Hosmer seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor of the final vote on Resolution 11, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Next, we're on to second reading and final approval of Resolution 12, a resolution relative to making itemized appropriations for the Special Revenue Fund Ambulance Emergency Medical Services for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. First order of business would be a motion to waive reading of Resolution 12 in its entirety and to read tonight by title only. Counselor Cheney happily makes that motion.
Yes, he
Counselor
does.
Hosman even more happily seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Next up would be to move a second reading of Resolution 12 relative to the Special Revenue Fund Ambulance Emergency Medical Services. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Hamel seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving Resolution 12 on second reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. And finally, motion be in order to approve Resolution 12 on final vote relative to making appropriations for the Special Revenue Fund Ambulance Emergency Medical Services for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. Counselor Hosmer enthusiastically makes that motion. Counselor Hamel nods approval, and he's going to second it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Stand in line for all those who want to be mayor and read this all next year.
I'm going to propose a different way of doing this next year.
Okay, now we're down to the 3 TIF districts, and then we're done.
Find the resolutions.
First up is Resolution 13, resolution relative to making itemized appropriations for the tax increment financing district downtown for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. First motion to be in order would be to waive a reading of Resolution 13 and to read tonight by title only. Counselor Hosmer is the first hand up again. And Counselor Haynes seconds that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Next up, a motion be in order to approve on second reading Resolution 13 relative to the tax increment financing district downtown. Let me change it up here. Who wants to? Counselor Lippman makes that motion, and Counselor Cheney can get his hand up for a second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in approval of second reading of Resolution 13, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. And finally, a motion to be in order to approve Resolution 13 on final reading. This is relative to making appropriations for the tax increment financing district downtown for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Lippman seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Penultimate resolution, number 14, relative to making itemized appropriations for the tax increment financing district Lakeport for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Motion be in order to waive the reading of Resolution 14 in its entirety and to read tonight by title only. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Cheney seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries unanimously. Motion be in order to approve on second reading Resolution 14 relative to the tax increment financing district Lakeport. Counselor Hosmer makes that motion. Counselor Cheney seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. And finally, a motion be in order to approve Resolution 2019-14 on final vote relative to making appropriations for the tax increment financing district Lakeport for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Counselor Cheney can't wait for me to finish. Counselor Hosmer, did you second that?
I did.
He did.
I couldn't catch up with him.
We're going to turn this into Jeopardy. Everybody should have a buzzer to ring in. Okay. Any discussion? We had the motions, right? Counselor Cheney and Counselor Hosmer. All those in favor of Resolution 14 on final reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative. And we have arrived at our final resolution for fiscal year 2020, and that is Resolution number 15, relative to making itemized appropriations for the tax increment financing district Weirs for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30th, 2020. A motion be in order to waive a reading of Resolution 15 in its entirety and to read tonight by title only. Counselor Hosmer, you won that time. Counselor Lippman gets second. And he
You
gets
do
the
look
sec-
left initially, you know.
Did I?
You don't give them enough attention.
Well, he's so shy over there, right? All right, so where are we here? We have a motion and a second, right, Madam Clerk? This is getting pretty weary here. Any discussion? All those in favor of waiving reading, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion carries. Next up, a motion be in order to waive the second reading of Resolution 15 relative to the tax increment financing district Weirs. I'm looking right this time. Counselor Cheney makes that motion. And Counselor Haynes seconds it. You've been quiet for a while here. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 5 votes in the affirmative. All right, 1 to go. We'll let Counselor Hamel make this motion. He just
There you
woke
go.
up from his nap here, so.
Is that what it was? Okay.
All right, so we're down to a final approval of Resolution 15 relative to making appropriations for the Tax Increment Finance District Weirs for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019 and terminating June 30, 2020. Counselor Hamel makes that motion. Counselor Haynes seconds it. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving Resolution 15 on final vote, please raise a hand. And surprisingly, it's a unanimous vote, 5-0. And Resolution 15 has been adopted. So anybody want to make a lengthy speech about approving the budget?
I think we ought to go
trying
back
to
and read
just-
them again, just make sure we did it right.
In a short one, yeah,
I'm
okay.
trying to decide whether I should file a claim for elder abuse or PTSD.
All right, well,
It's gotta
thank
be
you
about-
all for your participation in the budget and deliberation, and congratulations to all of you, and a thank you to the staff, especially and all our department heads for their presentations.
funny.
And Glenn, thank you much for picking the ball up midway, or whatever way it was when you became involved. And
Clerk for keeping us straight. Thank you.
Yeah.
quite an effort.
It's quite a job.
Council comments. You've been saving it up?
I have.
All right, Counselor Cheney.
I was hoping that at our next meeting, the manager or someone on the staff could give us a report on the Court Street property. I think it's the Stafford property. That looks like Dracula's home.
The old house?
Yeah. And I seem to recall we were told it was, something was gonna be done with it, and I noticed nothing has, and I was hoping perhaps you could find out for us.
You could approach the Stafford Oil Company and ask what their plans are.
We will have an update for you.
Something we've received in the last few days, and I don't remember exactly, or maybe I received it, I'm not sure, but was complaints about skateboarding up in the Weirs, and what was or wasn't being done about it, which made me think, what is the status of the skateboard ETS?
Behind the police station?
Yes. Yes, park. And again, at next meeting.
You know, offhand?
Yeah, basically, it's been shut down for several years. They were wooden elements that were built, I believe it was with some of the students over at the
Hewitt
Hewitt
Center, yeah.
Center, and have just outlived their useful life. Most skate parks now are going in with non-wood surfaces, some form of fiberglass or metal or combination thereof. I know we've had some money in request for the CIP over the last several years, and it hasn't risen to the point where it's been funded, recommended by the CIP committee and or funded through my budget request. I want to say that the number is $75,000, but give me 1 second and I can.
Is that to fix the wood?
The wood is all gone. It is
Oh,
pulled and
I
it is
understand that,
completely
but
empty.
the-
It would get all new elements that were not made out of wood, made
Oh,
out of another
Yep.
longer lasting
Got it.
type of material.
They had metal elements there too that started to get dangerous,
Oh, I'm sure.
fraying.
Yeah, I don't see the number off the top of my head, but I want to say it was a $75,000 request in prior years.
To the CIP committee?
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it was brought forward this year at that point. I know when Kevin Dunleavy was here, there was some discussion about maybe trying to do something regionally, but then if it's regional, kids from one community or another are having to travel a significant distance to get there, and is that the best thing? So, and I do believe Meredith is going through a process right now with some fundraising effort, if I recall
They just
hearing
got a
that correctly.
$100,000 donation.
Something, so yes, I think Meredith's heading down a different path.
We can bus kids to Meredith.
Anyone else? Council comments?
One last thing, if I might.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
The architect who sent us, I think sent the manager a letter, architect or whatever. It doesn't
About the
matter.
parking?
Well, yeah, among other things. But one of the things he said that sort of struck me is, he said, what's our experience with the kiosks in the Weirs? You know, and I guess that means, A, how much money are we taking in? And B, what is the enforcement experience? And are there problems with people not using the kiosks and whatever? So I was hoping maybe at next 2 weeks' meeting, you could let us know those things as well.
So we have a summer and a half, well, not even a summer and a half. We're in our second summer.
Yep.
With the kiosks up there, right?
Is this our start of our third summer? Start of our third summer, so we do have 2 years.
So we have 2 in the books?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
The short answer, and I'll get you more details, but it's been very positive. They're easy to use so far. The
That
maintenance
letter was
hasn't been an
suggesting
issue.
that we charge for short-term parking downtown by using kiosks.
Right,
So-
right.
It's been a very user-friendly system. And there are some additional bells and whistles, like apps to your phone where you could add remotely that we haven't started to, and part of
And
that
at
is
the Weirs, we charge $1 an hour, right?
buck an hour. Part of that is we wanted turnover, so if somebody's sitting out on the beach or on a boat, we don't necessarily want them to be able to just feed their meter remotely and never have to move the car, but we can bring you our updates and our results.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we have a reminder, those of you who are on the Finance Committee get to stay.
It's going to be a long meeting.
Go home.
And
No, it isn't.
no other business to come before our meeting tonight. I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned at 9:40 PM. We made it by 20 minutes, huh?